It was the second week of third grade, a Friday, and I was still adjusting to the rhythm of the school year. The buzz of excitement from reuniting with friends had hardly worn off, and my teachers were living up to the hype. They were everything I had hoped for. Fridays, in particular, always brought a sense of anticipation. My friends and I had a tradition of heading to Dave & Buster's after school, and I was already imagining the fun ahead. That day was supposed to be like any other, a blend of routine and the excitement of the weekend looming. But instead, it became the day that changed how I saw the world. The time was nearing 11 a.m., and my mind was focused on the pizza we'd be having for lunch, our Friday staple. Third period math was dragging a little, but I felt good, knowing there were just a few more hours before freedom. I glanced at the clock, 30 minutes until lunch. I raised my hand and asked the teacher if I could use the restroom. She nodded and handed me the laminated hall pass. I walked out of the classroom, not knowing that those few steps would lead me to one of the most terrifying moments of my life. As I reached the bathroom, it was eerily quiet, just the echo of my footsteps bouncing off the tiled walls. I entered one of the stalls and did what I needed to do, the only thought in my head being how many slices of pizza I could snag during lunch. As I washed my hands, I heard it. 4 beeps, each one louder and more unsettling than the last. 4 beeps. Not a drill. My stomach lurched as the lockdown alarm reverberated through the empty halls. I froze for a second, unsure of what to do, but then instinct kicked in. The protocol was clear: hide, stay silent, and don't move. I quickly turned off the bathroom lights, plunging the room into darkness, and dashed into the stall, my heart racing as if it was trying to pound its way out of my chest. I sat on the toilet, trembling, and hugged my knees, trying to become invisible. Minutes felt like hours. The quiet in the bathroom was deafening, broken only by the muffled sounds of shuffling outside. My mind raced with thoughts. Was this a real threat? Where was the danger? Were my classmates okay? Each second that passed felt like an eternity, the weight of the silence pressing down on me. Then the sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway. My breath hitched. The footsteps grew louder, closer, stopping right outside the bathroom door. I held my breath, my whole body tense as the door creaked open. The soft glow of the hallway lights spilled into the bathroom, casting long, menacing shadows. Whoever was outside was standing still, listening. The footsteps resumed, soft but deliberate, moving across the tile floor toward the stall where I was hiding. I bit my lip to keep from making a sound. My heart was pounding so hard I feared whoever was outside could hear it. A shadow passed under the stall door. I stared at the small gap, watching as it moved slowly back and forth, like a predator circling its prey. They were just feet away. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to will myself into silence, praying they would leave. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the shadow retreated. The footsteps faded and the bathroom door swung shut with a soft thud. I waited, too afraid to move, my whole body rigid with fear. 15 more agonizing minutes passed. The lockdown was still in effect, and I was too terrified to leave my hiding spot. Then, out of nowhere, a scream ripped through the silence, a high-pitched, desperate scream. It wasn't close, but it was loud enough to freeze my blood. It was followed by the scuffling of feet, then nothing. Just as suddenly as it had started, the alarm ceased, and the school PA system crackled to life. "Elvis has left the building," our principal's voice echoed over the loudspeaker. The lockdown was over. It was the all-clear signal. I hesitated before slowly unlocking the stall door, my legs weak beneath me as I stepped into the now quiet hallway. The halls were eerily empty, save for the occasional teacher peeking out of their classrooms, eyes wide with concern. I returned to class, where my friends sat huddled together, looking pale and shaken. We were all dismissed early that day. My mom was waiting for me when I got home, her face pale with worry. That night, she sat me down and told me the truth about the lockdown. A man had entered the school, armed with a knife, furious over some personal betrayal involving his girlfriend. His plan? To find and hurt her son, a boy who was in my grade, though I didn't know him personally. The man had roamed the halls, attempting to break into classrooms, but a brave teacher, Mrs. Davis, had confronted him with nothing more than a pair of scissors. She managed to stab him in the shoulder, stopping him before he could harm anyone. That scream I had heard? That was him, when Mrs. Davis had fought back. The school was closed for a week. The boy the man had been after? He never came back. His family moved away, and his name was never spoken again. Even though I was unharmed, the experience stayed with me. I couldn't stop thinking about it. What if the man had come into the bathroom instead of wandering the halls? What if Mrs. Davis hadn't been brave enough to stop him? The world felt a little less safe after that day, a little less predictable. And I realized how quickly life can change in an instant. Senior year at Bayshore High was supposed to be the best time of my life. I had it all planned out. The parties, the college acceptance letters, the slow, bittersweet goodbyes as my friends and I prepared to go our separate ways. I was coasting through the fall semester with decent grades and a sense of pride that I'd made it this far. After all, Bayshore High was known for its tough curriculum. But I'd survived. Little did I know, something would happen that would make everything feel fragile, like a house of cards, ready to topple with the slightest breath. It was a chilly November afternoon. The kind of cold that nips at your nose and makes you pull your jacket tighter, even inside. I'd just finished lunch with my friends, laughing over something stupid one of them had said, when I felt the familiar pang of needing to use the restroom. After gulping down too much water with my sandwich, it was time for a quick break. I raised my hand in class and asked for the hall pass, not thinking twice about it. The halls were mostly empty as I walked toward the bathroom, my footsteps echoing softly. I pushed open the heavy bathroom door, and the cool tile walls greeted me with their usual sterile indifference. It was quiet, just the faint hum of fluorescent lights overhead. I slipped into one of the stalls, grateful for the brief moment of solitude, doing what I needed to do without a second thought. As I stood up and reached for the door, something caught my eye. It was small, barely noticeable at first. A tiny black object tucked up in the corner of the stall, nestled near the ceiling like a spider watching from its web. I squinted, my brain struggling to make sense of what I was seeing. Then it hit me. A camera. My heart stopped. For a moment I thought maybe I was imagining it. Maybe it was just part of the bathroom, something installed for maintenance purposes. But as I moved closer, the horrifying truth settled in. It was a camera, pointed directly at the stall I had just been using. My breath came in short, panicked gasps. Who had put it there? How long had it been recording? Was I on it? Fear gripped me, cold and sharp. My hands shook as I fumbled with the lock, desperate to get out of the stall, out of the bathroom. I didn't even wash my hands. I bolted out of there, my mind racing as I tried to make sense of what had just happened. By the time I reached the principal's office, I could barely form words, the panic spilling out in a frantic rush. There's a camera in the bathroom, a camera in the stall. Principal Whitman looked at me, her expression shifting from concern to shock. Without wasting a second, she grabbed a ladder from the janitor's closet and followed me back to the bathroom. I stood back, still shaking, as she climbed up and confirmed what I already knew. There it was, a camera, its lens glaring down at us like an unblinking eye. The police were called immediately. The camera was removed, bagged, and taken as evidence. Principal Whitman told me I could go home for the day, that I didn't have to stick around. I didn't argue. I just wanted to be far, far away from that bathroom. When I got home, my parents were waiting for me, their faces pale with worry. I could barely get the words out as I explained what had happened. They were horrified, angry, and protective all at once. They wanted answers, just like I did. The next few days were a blur of police interviews and meetings with school officials. I found out that I wasn't the only one who had been recorded. Other girls had been using that bathroom too, oblivious to the fact that someone had been watching them. The thought made my skin crawl. The police eventually arrested the man responsible, Daniel Garcia. He was a recent graduate, only a few years older than us, who had come back to the school to help out with the drama club. He wasn't some faceless predator lurking in the shadows. He was someone we knew, someone we trusted. He had installed the camera early one morning, slipping into the bathroom unnoticed before the school day had started. He had planned everything, from the placement of the camera to the time he would retrieve the footage. But he hadn't counted on me noticing it before he had the chance. Daniel was arrested, but in court, he pled not guilty. He claimed it was all a misunderstanding, that it wasn't what it looked like. My parents and I, along with another girl who had been recorded, filed restraining orders against him. But no legal action could erase the violation we felt. The damage was already done. Even though the camera was gone, the feeling of being watched stayed with me. Every time I entered a bathroom, I found myself scanning the walls, the ceiling, every corner, half expecting to find another camera lurking there. That sense of safety I had always taken for granted was shattered. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone somewhere was always watching. Union Free School had always stood as a monument to the past, a decaying relic from the 1980s. The abandoned building sat at the edge of town, its windows broken, its walls crumbling under the weight of time and neglect. The school had been closed down after a fire ravaged the gymnasium, leaving the place in ruins. But it wasn't the fire that made Union Free School infamous. It was the stories, the ghost stories. Everyone in town knew about the legends. How strange lights flickered in the windows at night, how you could sometimes hear the laughter of children echoing through the empty halls, even though no one had set foot inside in decades. But the most chilling story of all was the one about Room 104. The tale went that Room 104 was cursed. No one really knew why, but they said it was haunted by the spirits of children who had died in the fire. Some people claimed that if you stood outside the room late at night, you could hear voices, faint whispers of children crying for help, begging to be freed. Others said they had seen shadows moving behind the door, even though the room had been sealed shut since the fire. I never believed any of it. To me, it was just another ghost story meant to scare kids away from the old school. But something about the way people talked about Room 104 always intrigued me. There was a weight to their words, a sincerity in their fear. So one night, fueled by a mix of curiosity and bravado, I decided to see for myself. It was a Friday night in October, just after midnight, when I made my way to Union Free School. The sky was clear, the full moon casting a pale light over the abandoned building. I carried a flashlight in one hand and my phone in the other, ready to document whatever I found. The school loomed ahead of me, its windows dark and foreboding, the entrance barely visible under the tangled vines that had taken over the facade. I found a broken window near the side of the building and climbed inside. The air was thick with dust and the faint smell of mildew. Every step I took echoed through the empty halls, the sound unnerving in the stillness of the night. My flashlight beam flickered across the cracked walls, revealing faded murals and graffiti left by generations of thrill-seekers who had come before me. The deeper I ventured into the school, the colder it became. At first, I thought it was just the lack of heat, but this cold was different. It wasn't just a physical chill. It felt like something was wrong. Something unnatural. The air felt heavy, like it was pressing down on me, making it harder to breathe. Finally, I found the door to room 104. It was just as I had imagined, an ordinary door, chipped and weathered from years of neglect. But as I stood in front of it, a strange sense of unease washed over me. My heart raced, my palms sweaty as I reached for the doorknob. It was ice cold to the touch. For a moment I hesitated, wondering if I should turn back, if I should leave this place behind and forget about the stories. But my curiosity won out. I pushed the door open. The room looked like any other abandoned classroom. Desks overturned, books scattered on the floor, the chalkboard covered in faded, unintelligible writing. But there was something about the air in that room, something I couldn't explain. It felt thick, heavy, like the room itself was alive, watching me, waiting. I stepped inside, my flashlight casting long shadows across the walls. The temperature dropped even further, the air now so cold I could see my breath in front of me. I took a few more steps, my heart pounding in my chest, my nerves on edge. Then I heard it, a faint whisper, barely audible over the sound of my own breathing. I froze, straining to listen. "Help me." The voice was soft, distant, like it was coming from far away. My pulse quickened. I scanned the room, but there was no one there. Just me, the darkness, and the eerie silence. But then I heard it again, louder this time. "Help us." It wasn't just one voice anymore. It was several, dozens. Children's voices, crying, pleading, begging. My stomach turned, a wave of nausea washing over me as the voices grew louder, more insistent. "Don't leave us." I took a step back, my hands trembling as I aimed the flashlight at the corner of the room. The beam flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. I could feel my heart racing, the fear rising in my throat as the voices closed in. I stumbled backward, my foot catching on something. I fell hard, the flashlight slipping from my grip and rolling across the floor. As I scrambled to my feet, my eyes were drawn to the chalkboard. My blood ran cold. Words had appeared on the board, scrawled in jagged, uneven handwriting that hadn't been there moments before. "We never left." I didn't think. I ran. The voices followed me, their desperate cries echoing through the halls as I bolted out of room 104 and down the corridor. My lungs burned as I raced for the exit, my heart pounding in my ears. I didn't stop running until I was outside, gasping for breath, the cold night air stinging my skin. The school stood behind me, silent and dark. But the voices, they still echoed in my mind, faint and haunting, a reminder of what I had witnessed. I never went back to Union Free School after that night, but the memory of those voices, their desperate pleading cries, still haunts me. Whatever happened in that room, those children never left.